Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I was just about to do my makeup as normal and then I thought I have a new beauty tool that I'm trying out. So I thought why not try out for the first time on camera. What I'm talking about is the Bold Metals sponge. I'm a big fan of Real Techniques and I think a lot of people are because they're fairly budget friendly and easily accessible brushes to get hold of and actually really good quality and synthetic. I like them, I really do like them. Anyway, I think last year they brought out the Bold Metals collection, which is a more expensive diffusion line than their core collection, and very recently they have brought out a sponge to go with it. Anyway, this sponge is £12, which I believe is more or less double the price of the standard one in their core collection, which I have used before and I thought was okay. Instead of doing a standalone first impressions on this, I thought I would do a little versus with the Beautyblender, which is, you know, the standard go-to coveted sponge. So as I said earlier, this one's £12 and this is £18. Now, I get mine from Space NK and they only sell theirs with a soap. I believe you can get these without soaps and I think it's only a £2 difference. So, but yeah, as I said, I've only ever bought them with soaps, but this lasts you an age. Like, I've got another one in my bathroom which I'm using, and then I've got this spare one unwrapped as well. So bearing in mind that that is a £6 difference, which, you know, it's £6 savings if they're good, but this one does come with something to clean it, whereas this doesn't. So that's something to keep in mind straight away. My Beautyblender, I would say, is about 6 weeks old at this point, and as I said, I haven't used this at all. This is brand spanking new. Both of these I have already pre-dampened, so they're a little bit bigger than what they come in the packaging. And how I like to dampen my sponge is to really wring it out so they're just damp, they're not like sopping wet, because then I think you can still get quite good coverage and it blends really well. Anyway, so I thought I would use everything that you would typically use a sponge for. I'm even going to bake. If you're wondering what baking is, I did a video on baking a good couple of months ago now, so I'll link that down below if you want to know a little bit more about baking. This side I've got quite a few spots, so I'm going to use this with concealer to see how that works. This one, luckily I have spots on this side of my face as well, so we can see how the two compare. But yeah, so this side is going to be Real Tech and this side is going to be Beautyblender, and I will let you know what I think of the finish when I'm done. I'm going to zoom you in and I'm going to clip my fringe out of the way. Where did I put that clip? Here it is. Right, I have clipped my fringe up and I've just primed my skin with the Makeup Forever hydrating primer, and I've done that all over my face. I wanted to pick a foundation which was sort of a traditional foundation, like a nice liquid foundation that was a medium coverage, wasn't too matte, wasn't too dewy, was a sort of nice middle of the road product. Anyway, and I've gone for the Star foundation by Dior. This is actually my most recent favourites as well. I do really quite like this one, but you know, it is a liquid foundation, so whatever you use, obviously use that. But for this little experiment, I wanted to use something which sort of would encompass a lot of bases. Right, I'm going to start with the Real Tech sponge. One thing I will say, before I dampened both of these, you could definitely feel the difference in them. The Beautyblender was a lot softer and the Real Tech sponge was a lot sort of more tougher, but now that they're both dampened, this one is still softer, but now that they're wet, they're a lot more similar. So I just thought I would let you know that, first of all. So I've got a nice glob of foundation on, and I like applying all over foundation with the tip mainly, and then sort of buffing it around with the rest of it. So let's give this a go. Obviously this is a shape of a diamond, in case you hadn't picked up on that already, which I think will have some pros and some cons in comparison to the Beautyblender, which is obviously sort of more of a teardrop shape. I've already given up on the point and gone to sort of the bottom. Right, I've done one layer of foundation with the Real Tech sponge and it does look incredibly skin-like, but you can also definitely still see my blemishes popping through and it doesn't really look like it's put a lot of coverage on. I'm now going to do one layer of foundation on this side with the Beautyblender. One thing I will say with using sponges in general, you definitely use a lot more foundation. Because it's a sponge and obviously if you're using it wet as well, it definitely like soaks up a bit of it. And because it's also wet, it can also sort of dilute it as well. So there's that. So the wetter you have the sponge, the more sheer the foundation will be. I don't know if it's because I'm used to using a Beautyblender, but because this is smaller and less angular, I think it makes it easier to use and easier to hold. But again, that could be just because I'm used to using this. I don't know if the Real Tech sponge will just take a little bit more getting used to. My sponge using technique, I tend to do a little bit of sort of swiping and a little bit of dabbing, a mixture of the two. just to make sure everything's nice and blended. At this point, looking at my face, I would say that I have got more coverage from the Beautyblender side, but I do have more spots on this side because I wanted to really see how the Real Tech sponge covered blemishes with concealer. So I feel like in like the parts of my face where, you know, I don't have blemishes going on, there seems to be more coverage. I'm going to do 2 layers of foundation with both and see if that makes any difference. Now that I've done a second layer of foundation, I would say that I've got more coverage on the Beautyblender side. However, the Real Technique side, my skin looks, I mean, not that the Beautyblender side doesn't look natural, but it looks not really like I'm really wearing makeup on this side of the face. And I still do have quite a lot of coverage. So I guess it depends what you're sort of after. Yeah, I would say this side has more coverage, but it makes it look like I've got foundation on, where, well, it looks more like I've got foundation on this side, whereas this side, I'm still getting a good coverage, but it definitely looks more like skin. So, interesting. Moving on to face concealer, I'm going to be using the Makeup Forever Full Cover Concealer. Full Cover Concealer? Yep, the waterproof, you know, the heavy duty one. And what I like to do is I like to put the concealer on with my finger and then blend it in with the tip of the sponge. I would actually say the sponge has done actually a pretty dosh darn good job at covering my spots. I don't really feel like, I think I'm going to go over once more with concealer just for good measure because these 3 are pretty red. I don't know if it's coming up so much on camera, but in person they are pretty prominent spots, but actually this has covered them pretty well. I think this concealer is a little bit lighter than my foundation, although that's not anything to do with the sponge, but that's what I think is making them stand out, not necessarily the coverage, the lack of coverage. To be fair, on the Beautyblender side, these seem pretty covered with the foundation, but I am going to go over just in case. I would say they're actually pretty similar at covering spots actually, if you like to use the point to pinpoint your spots. I'm actually pretty impressed with how well, obviously this concealer is also fantastic, let's say that too, but I think it's done a pretty good job. Next up, I'm going to bake my under eyes, and I'm going to use definitely these 2 and maybe a little bit of this one. Sounds excessive, but fun fact, the other day my dad asked me whether or not I had a black eye, and no, it was just the dark circles under my eyes. I like to use the Maybelline Eraser Eye Concealer. You've seen this one around before. I also like to use a colour corrector. This one's by Yves and Laurent, and this is like in their Touche Eclat, but what do they call it? Touche Eclat Neutraliser, this is what it is, and I like it in purple. I am really tempted to try, after this one's ran out, the Urban Decay one. At the moment, these are my dream team for under my eyes, but just in case I have a little bit of my dark circles popping through, I am going to chuck a little bit of this over the top as well. I'm going to pop these on, blend them in with the sponges, and then I'm going to use loose powder. I like to use the Ben Nye Fair Translucent Face Powder under my eyes to bake, and then I'm going to do the rest of my makeup and kick it off and see if there's any difference. Anyway, so starting off with this one, give it a nice little twirl. As I said at the beginning, I've done a whole video on baking, so if you want something a little bit more in depth about the process that I'm about to do, I'll have that link down below. Real Tech's first. Now this is where, more so with the applying the powder, I think this might be a problem, this shape. Let's see. Actually, that works pretty well. I thought because of the angles, it might not be able to sort of blend as easily. That's actually done a pretty good job. Anyway, next moving on to the Beautyblender. By the way, if you're wondering what this is that I'm waving in front of you, it's the mirror that I'm using. I feel like they've both blended out pretty similarly, but what I will say is I took longer doing it with the Real Tech sponge. And it was a lot quicker for me to use the Beautyblender. Again, that could be simply because I'm getting used to that sponge and it could be the first time that I've used it. Or maybe you need to put a little bit more work in to get the desired effect. But actually, to be fair, they're both pretty well blended. Anyway, I'm now going to pop on some bake. This powder is great, by the way, and it's like an industry product and it's really not that expensive, but the container that it comes in makes it fucking difficult to use. I'm not going to go crazy on the bake today. I've just done my Real Tech eye and it worked fine. The Beautyblenders seem to pick up more powder, which could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on how much powder you want. The powder seemed to sort of stick to the Beautyblender easier than it did the Real Tech sponge. I definitely feel like there's more on the Beauty Blender than there was on the Real Touch sponge every time I dipped it. My bake is now on. I'm going to leave that on whilst I do my eye makeup. I will be right back after I've done that to take my bake off. So it's been about 5/10 minutes and I think it's time to kick off my bake. I'm using a blush brush. This is from Smashbox, and I'm using the Ambient Lighting palette. Just going to give it a bit of this, just to sweep it all off. Oh, that's interesting. I would say immediately looking at them, I prefer the Real Tech side. Honestly, I didn't think there was going to be that much difference. I don't know if it's to do with how wet or dry the sponges are, but I would say they were similarly sort of wet. And like directly underneath my eye, this has sort of got like a little bit more of like a build up. Whereas this side doesn't have it. It might actually be to do with that. I was saying that the Beauty Blender was picking up more powder than this side. And so arguably, maybe a bit too much. Interesting. Right, I'm going to wait for my mascara to dry and then I'm going to finish my face up and sort of give you my final thoughts. Right, now that I have the rest of my makeup on, I wouldn't say there's a tremendous difference in each side, to be honest with you. Makeup has blended quite nicely over the top. I've just used powders over the top of what I showed you that I applied, and I applied those with brushes. I'm pleasantly surprised. I thought this was going to be a bit, I don't want to say like a dud, but I think the whole shape of it was going to be a bit of a gimmick. Like, yeah, I suppose they are kind of similar shapes. Yeah, but I thought that was going to be a little bit gimmicky and it wasn't going to be as good a quality. And I think between the two, it comes down to what you want out of a sponge. This one's softer, and I do think, I don't know if it's to do with the fact that I'm used to using this, but I found I worked quicker, and this worked quicker than this one. However, I was pleasantly surprised with how this worked with powders. And also, you know, I think I'm going to continue using it, and I'll probably get back to you at some point saying how once I've used this a little bit more, I'll let you know if I've got to grips with the shape a little bit better and if I found it easier or like the speed the same. I guess it depends what you want in a sponge. This one's softer and this one's harder when they're wet, but even more so when they're dry. I think I prefer this one for powders and this one for creams. What I will say, although as I said before, this one's only £6 more and you get a soap, this is more likely to go on sale at like Boots or what have you than this will. Like this, I don't think sells in any shops that really go on sale. Except for maybe online, you might be able to get like a discount code or something. Whereas this, you know, Boots have sales on all the time, like 3 for 2s or buy one get one half price or stuff like that. So that's something to look out for. So I would say, you know, pick this up whilst it's on sale. You know, I'm sure you can probably get it down to it's £12. So I'm sure if it was like buy one get one half price or something, you know, you get it for less than a tenner, which makes it half the price of this if it's on sale, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would recommend it. I was pleasantly surprised. As I said, I'm going to keep on using it. I'm going to see how my makeup wears through the day. I will leave any notes down the bottom if I have any notes for how my makeup sits or if I see if anything changes. Because to be honest, I think a lot of this is to do more with the application and how the product works as opposed to how it will wear throughout the day. However, if this, you know, melts off my face, I'll let you know. But yeah, I would say if it's on sale, pick this one up. I mean, I think a lot of people who are fans of the Beauty Blender will stay fans of the Beauty Blender, but if this one's on sale, I implore you to pick it up and give it a go, and particularly if you bake or like to use sponges with powders, because I think I was pleasantly surprised with how nicely this applied and how my bake has looked afterwards. Please let me know if there are any products you would like me to try out, if you've been curious about, leave them down in the comments below. Also in the description box are all my social media links if you want to, you know, see what I'm up to on a more regular basis. Subscribe if you haven't, and I shall see you soon. Bye! Now here's the fun part that makes it look like I love cocaine.